Hi, this is Mike from Princess Goes. And you're listening to the New Wave Music Podcast.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the New Wave Music Podcast. You know me as T-Bone.
And as always, you know me as Steve.
Well, Steve, we never turned down an interview, so we couldn't pass up on the ones that we've done, but it's finally time for another album review episode. But first of all, we'd like to give a shout out to our listeners in Bristol, England. We really appreciate you being out there.
Well, T-Bone, you're right. We've had a revolving door of interviews, which is a good thing, I guess.
Yes.
But let's jump into this first review. Why don't you tell us who we're going to be reviewing?
Okay, so up first today is going to be the latest from the Jesus and Mary chain. You'll remember them from such songs as Head On,
And there's nothing holding me to blame. Makes you wanna feel, makes you wanna try, makes you wanna blow the stars from the sky. And I'm taking myself to the dirty part of town where all my troubles can be found.
Just Like Honey,
Listen to the girl as she takes on half the world, moving up and so alive in her honey dripping behind.
and Sidewalking.
And I gotta get a car, and I gotta get a ride. Gotta get a car, with Jesus on my side. Sidewalking. Sidewalking.
They have a new album entitled Glasgow Eyes, and this was just released here in 2024. Now, this is the 8th studio album from the band. Last year, we reviewed their previous album, Damage and Joy, which came out in 2017. And Steve, on this album, the band currently is just essentially the Reed brothers, Jim and William. Both share vocals on different tracks, and there are a few other artists involved, such as Tony Dugan on piano, but otherwise, it's solely the brothers on all the instruments. They also commented that they went into the studio with just the outline of ideas and experimented to make the album. And Steve, as a matter of fact, the original tapes were lost, so they had to do it all over again.
Yeah, I did see that. That was in my little nuggets of information. One other thing I found out that I just really liked that stood out to me was the band recorded the album Glasgow Eyes mostly at the Castle of Doom Studios in Glasgow.
Right.
Love that name.
Yes. All right, so let's start off on the first track, Venal Joy.
My venal heart is filled with pain. My venal heartbeat filled with pain. My venal heart is filled with pain. My venal heartbeat filled with pain. And then you came around. And then you came around.
Now, Steve, this may be the best song ever about a urinary tract infection. The track is very well paced and a good representation of their style. The band decided, as I mentioned, to experiment with synths like they never have before, and this opening track is a perfect example. The synths come in first and then stick around under Williams' guitars, but they continue to come out as the song goes on, really taking over the track, far more than the guitars. It's something that seems really at odd with their instrumental history, but it works.
The first track on this album starts off with a bit of musical distortion that quickly transitions into a great synth and bass line. Jim's vocals come quickly into the mix. Right off the bat, T-Bone, my impression was on this song was being greeted by an old familiar friend. I really liked this track to open the album. Also, another nice touch was the way this track ends with that bass line kind of fading like a heartbeat slowing down.
Right. And the second track is American Born.
I drank with Americans. I live with Americans. I look like Americans. I talk like Americans. I'm American born. I'm American born.
Now, the band slows things down just a bit on this track, but not by much. It still has some punch to it. The combination of synths and guitars are intriguing as the song opens, and then as the percussion comes in, the song becomes even stronger. And the lyrics, a biting look at America from the eyes of these Scottish brothers, I think is fascinating to listen to.
Again, a mixture of percussion, bass, and synth accompany this track. I really like the guitar riff that goes throughout this song. I enjoyed the snarky lyrics that Jim delivers.
Yes.
I wonder if it was a bit of a swipe, though, to his brother William, who does live in the U.S. Yet this song is another one I found myself really getting lost into the melody and vibe. It's another one for me that could have gone on just a little bit longer.
That is fascinating. I didn't realize that William lived in the U.S. I could definitely see with the history of the two brothers not always being so amicable that could be about him.
Yeah. Well, let's see what we felt about track number 3, Mediterranean X Film.
And June Cash, she loved everyone. It looks like we love everybody.
The musicianship on this track I really enjoyed. It's one that really benefits to listening to, as we like to say, with a good pair of headphones on to catch all the various instruments and sounds. Jim's vocals are a bit low, but isn't that a given with the Jesus and Mary Chain album? The lyrics I didn't feel were as tight as the first few tracks, but for the music melody on this track, it's still one that I would recommend checking out.
I think you may have liked this one just a touch more than I did. I did find the instruments to be fascinating on this track. There's an incredible layer of different sounds, but for me, that's kind of where the compliment ends. It's really not all that interesting once you move past the musicianship. Fortunately, the guitar work is well played, though I don't really see it as the most complex William has ever produced. There's a really odd but interesting use of electronic percussion in the middle of the track. It's brief, but for me, it really stood out.
And that takes us to track number 4, JAMCOD.
There must be an answer to the question I don't know. It's too close to midnight and there has to be no show. Breaking up and then falling down and my heart beats much too slow. Best notify the other brother. There's no place to go.
Here is the first single from the album, and it's also a bit of a recalling of the band's breaking up from back in 1999. Jim has said about this song it came from remembering past painful issues. It was about the breakup of the band, he explained. It's actually about the night from the House of Blues when the band broke up back in 1999. In fact, it's the first of 2 songs about the past of the band. This song, though, we are greeted to an outstanding bass line with some synths that will pull you right into this track. I really enjoyed this one, from Jim's vocals to the solid musicianship. No question this is an album highlight and one that you're going to want to revisit again after listening to it.
Yeah, I think that this song really deals with the true themes of this album: sex, drugs, and rock and roll. JAMCOD, which I just call Jam Cod, clearly stands for Jesus and Mary Chain Overdose, and the lyrics really represent it. Vegetable, mineral, animal, I don't know what you want, what you need. I've become recently deceased. But the highlight of the track is a combination of guitars and synths, especially as the song opens. The synths are very grungy, whirling around consistently through the song, and when the guitar comes in powerfully, it's quite a merger that I found fascinating. That'll take us to the 5th track, Discotheque.
Lost in music, lost in trance, idiotic happy dance, lights and amps and record decks. Welcome to my discotheque.
William opens the track with a guitar riff taken directly from Bauhaus. Jim's vocals match the music, singing in a more monotone fashion than we've heard so far on the album. There's a number of small synth inclusions that I found fascinating that are repeated throughout the song. Overall, though, the guitar pattern does become a bit tiresome as the song goes on. It seldom changes, which I don't think is very beneficial.
Well, T-Bone, when we came to this track, I immediately thought of you and your love of the bass that's throughout this album. Once again, this track features some solid bass work. It's a dark, brooding track that after a few listens to really grew on me. I like your comparison to the Bauhaus song that really kind of matches that on point. It's a different direction from the last track, and it's one that might take you a bit to get into, but if you're a Jesus and Mary Chain fan, I feel you're going to really enjoy this one as well.
Up next is the 6th track, Pure Pour. The band slows things down quite a bit for this track. Here, a little experimentation with blues is an interesting choice. The grinding guitar chops through the song. Sadly, though, I found the lyrics were rather weak. For example, I went to the store, baby, I was poor. Oh boy.
I just don't know how I'm going to follow that up, but we'll give it a shot here. For a change, we get a mixture of guitars and keys to kick off the track. The vocals come in and are a bit distorted. T-Bone, just when I was really enjoying this album and the flow of it with no skippable tracks, unfortunately, I'm going to have to say we hit that right here. This is one I would say skip. It felt out of place and grinded the album to a halt for me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you on that. Next up is the 7th track, The Eagles and the Beatles.
I grew up the Beatles. I got late Sex Pistols. I got drunk on crystals. I've been rolling with the Stones, making Ethan Brian Jones.
I like how the song starts with a sort of I love rock and roll riff. I found myself tapping my toes to the beat each time I listened to this track. The rest of the song, with the band name checking those artists that influence them, is maybe just a little bit less interesting, but certainly not the worst I've ever heard. The combination of the guitars outside of that riff, which is repeated throughout the song, with both electric and acoustic guitars, is pretty well played.
Okay, T-Bone. Well, again, we're still in each other's notes here. I have on here, yes, the track kicks off with a subtle riff of I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett. That being said, I really enjoyed the lyrics and how Jim takes you on a journey of the musicians that he grew up with. After the misfire of the last track, I'm happy to say this album makes a great recovery. T-Bone, this is another album highlight for me.
You know, and I just want to interject with that again, and we've mentioned this in the past, but not for quite some time. Steve and I do not talk about these reviews ahead of time. So when things kind of match up, it's very interesting. And when things don't match up, it's really interesting.
We'll see how our notes match up on track number 8, Silver Strings.
You got the neat seats and golden chandeliers. You got 1 billion shiny things. I got 6 dirty silver strings.
I love the music melody on this track. That subtle use of synths and that key riff was an absolute highlight. The vocal delivery was on point for me. The song flowed very well, and another one that I would say it's worth checking out.
You know, I've liked some of the songs on this album, but this actually probably is my favorite song on the whole album. Sonically, this is the best track on the album. There's a lot going on within this song instrumentally, and the relationship between the guitar, synths, and the sound of strings, which I assume are created by synths, is very compelling. Jim's vocals aren't that much different from his work on the rest of the song, but his steady voice is still very appealing.
Moving on to track number 9, Chemical Animal.
There is something you should know. There is something I don't show. I fill myself with chemicals.
I hinted earlier about 2 songs about the band's past. This is the second one of those songs. Jim said that this song was about thinking back to the drug days and what it was like. It's like everything acting on instinct and you become an animal, and it's all about the drugs. The thing that gets you from A to B is whenever you can score. It's a horrible way to live, and I'm glad I don't do that anymore. Moving on to actually how the song is, the track features some good vocals and lyrics from Jim. It's mixed against a great synth percussion line that works wonderfully. The subject matter on the song might not be the most uplifting, but it's another track that I would highly recommend.
Well, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, this album really is about sex, drugs, and rock and roll,
Yeah.
and their history, what they've been through over the past number of decades. This is really one of those slower tracks on the album, but it does come with some very interesting use of synths in conjunction with Williams' guitars. Those synths weave in and out of the song, which, yes, as we've already mentioned a couple of times here, really require some good headphones. As with some other tracks on the album, this is another one deals with the drug use of the band in the past. I think the slower pace actually works pretty well with the song's subject matter.
I agree, and I really like how the band's being just not pulling any punches on the subject matter of this album.
Right.
I think that's to its strength.
I agree. Yeah, it's a very honest album. So that'll take us up to the 10th track, 2nd of June.
I don't need this anymore. I can't be this anymore. No more. What you said, all those things are dead. Brother, can you hear me calling you?
The pace does pick up slightly with this late track on the album. The primary focus instrumentally is some driving piano synths. It seems odd, as with a couple other instances previously on the album, that William reiterates the name of the band as part of the lyrics. It's not that it doesn't fit the song, but sometimes it just seems a little bit strange.
Well, T-Bone, for a minute, how this track started off, I swore I was listening to something by the Lightning Seeds. This one has some solid musicianship. After the dark tone and subject matter of the last track, this one comes across as the most joyful, musically sounding track on the album. It's another one that has quickly turned into one of my favorites on this album.
Okay, up next is the 11th track, Girl 71.
I can't get by without you now. Another day. Can't get by without you. We got what we need. Hey, we got what we need.
I would hardly say that this is one of the better tracks on the album, but there are a few things that did catch my attention. The first is the hand claps throughout the song. I really enjoyed those. And the other is the female backing vocals. I thought they really fit in well with Jim's vocals and the style of the song itself.
I would also add to that the mix of the guitars and synths throughout this track I felt was on point. But I think, T-Bone, I did enjoy this track maybe just a little bit more than you. Usually by now on an album we're getting a few skippable or filler tracks. I'm thrilled to say that this one was not one of those tracks for me. Again, we get some tight vocals mixed with solid musicianship to make an enjoyable sounding song. And that mix of the hand clap and the backing vocals just elevated it for me. It's another one I'd say worth checking out. And we're going to close out the album with track number 12, Hey Lou Reed. First off, I have to give the Jesus and Mary Chain credit for one of the most creative song titles I've heard in a long time. It made me chuckle when I heard it. Getting into this track, I enjoyed the concept of the tribute to Lou Reed. Fortunately, the delivery of the track fell flat. The song takes several changes in tempo, but at over 6 minutes in length, that does not help this track. Unfortunately, I do have to say we end with a track that I would say skip.
Well, do you think this is a tribute to Lou Reed? Because the title is Reed, R-E-I-D, not R-E-E-D. So I'm not sure if it is or not, but
that's what I took from it.
Well, okay,
and how the vocals were kind of mixed and muted. And...
Right. Okay. Yeah. And it's not to be confused. Well, and see, in my opinion, I felt that it wasn't to be confused with the late artist Lou Reed, because they spell it as how the brothers spell Reed. So I don't know if it is or not, but on a positive note, we closed the album with some grungy guitar work, but midway through that completely changes to a more basic and less interesting instrumentation. And for the first time, the vocals are muted for the first third of the song and almost indecipherable. It's a very strange choice and one that I don't think works at all. As the song goes on, that does change, but I think the damage was done. You mentioned, Steve, that this is the longest track of the album, but full of strange decisions, most of which I don't really think are all that successful.
Well, overall, T-Bone, I'm not what you would call a diehard The Jesus and Mary Chain fan. Yes, I own several albums, and I enjoy their hits. This album, to much of my surprise, grew on me quite a bit. With the exception of 2 songs, I recommend this album to any fan of the band, whether you're a diehard or casual fan. I feel you're really going to enjoy this album.
Yeah, and I feel the same about this album, basically, as I did about the previous Damage and Joy. There's still some interesting ideas and some really unique musical exploration. But is it good? Some parts, yes, but there's still a lot that leaves you less than excited. So personally, I think I'm going to give it a little bit lower than you did, Steve. I'm going to give Glasgow Eyes just the mildest of recommendation. Their most ardent fans might enjoy the album, especially for the instrumentation and that experimentation. But I don't see any hope that this album would appeal to a larger base.
All right, T-Bone, well, it's been quite a while since we've hit some music news, so why don't you get us started with some?
Yeah, let's jump in on this. Susie and Iggy Pop have recorded the song The Passenger. But the song is not available as a single. For right now, it's only available in the form of an ice cream commercial for Magnum Pleasure Express.
Well, T-Bone, we have some new music from NXS's Michael Hutchence. The song is called One Way.
It's a universal problem, so taking a stand. I'm gonna climb a mountain that's bigger than me and drive down to get you, make you see what I mean. There's only one way to do it. Kick it.
As we all know, Michael passed away back in 1997. Producer Danny Sable came across some unreleased material Michael was working on for his solo album. Danny Sable said, "One Way is the culmination of nearly 2 decades of work. One of the fundamental reasons for releasing this new and fresh offering is to give a glimpse into what might have been, and also maybe reawaken millions of people who may have simply forgot about Michael."
You know, a band that Steve and I both have really come to love, The Vapors, have released a new single called Eyes on the Prize.
Keep your eyes on the prize and forget about the neon signs. Keep your eyes on the prize and you see me coming round tonight. Keep your eyes on the prize and everything will be alright. Everything will be alright.
And as much as we liked their last full album, I hope the singles they've been releasing will make for a full album. I'm really hoping to see that soon.
I really would like that as well. And speaking of new singles, They Might Be Giants dropped a brand new single called Lazy.
I long to be lazy. I want to be lazy. I long to be out in the sun with no work to be done under that awning they call the sky.
No word yet if it's going to be on an upcoming album. They kind of just dropped it out of the blue.
We can
Wait
hope.
and see.
And I would like to say the most exciting thing in the news is that The announced a new album called Ensoulment. The first single released is called Cognitive Dissonance.
Black is white, inside out. Hope is down, below above. Hate is love, upside down. Square is round, war is peace.
And the full album will be released September 6th of this year. And equally exciting, I cannot wait, is that they're going on tour for the first time in decades. Those dates are going to start October 11th in Atlanta, Georgia, and take it through November 8th in Los Angeles, California.
Well, T-Bone, we've also got some brand new music from Oingo Boingo Former Members. Pretty much everybody but Danny in that band.
Right.
They released an EP called 420 OBDLA 024, which stands for Oingo Boingo Day LA. The EP includes 2 new original songs. The first features Sam Sluggo Phipps on vocals called Life is Good.
Mr. Wino in the alley, sleeping in the noonday sun. He doesn't have a dream or hope, he knows his life is done. He's living for the bottle, not depend on anyone. But life is good. Yes, life is good.
And the other features Carl Graves called Get Your Head Out of Your Ass.
Look up, look around. Where's the dreams that we once had, where cars would fly and nobody sad? 28th in the world in science and math. That's what's real. Did you know that? Where's your head today? Where is it? Get your head out your ass. Get your head out your ass. Come on. Where's your head today? What? Where's your head today? Get your head out your ass. Get your head out your ass. Where's your head today? Come on. Get your
Yeah.
And if it sounds like Steve and I maybe have a little bit gravelly voices, last night of this recording, we went and saw Oingo Boingo Former Members again. I don't even know how many times that is now, 6, 7, 8.
Oh, more than
nine,
that. We're in the double digits.
Yeah, and it was fantastic as usual. So, Steve, in the I Never Expected This file, Vicious Pink of all people, have some newish music. They've dropped the single So You Want to Love Me. And it's going to be from the just released album Undercover.
Well, T-Bone, I think we knocked out a bunch of news. Let's jump into our next album review. For this next review, we're going to be taking a dive into the newest album from the Pixies. You're no doubt going to remember Pixies from their hits such as Wave of Mutilation, Here Comes Your Man,
Out by the boxcar waiting, take me way to nowhere place. There is a wait so long, you never wait so long. Here comes a man, here comes a man.
and Where's My Mind.
You have a collapse, and there's nothing in it, and you'll ask yourself, where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
Or if we really want to tie it back to Jesus and Mary Chain, they also did a great cover of Head On.
Makes you wanna feel, makes you wanna try, makes you wanna blow a star from the sky. And I'm taking myself to a dead part town where all my troubles can't be found.
Yeah, this album is called Doggerel. It was released a couple of years ago, 2022. And strangely enough, just as you mentioned with Jesus and Mary Chain, Steve, this is also the 8th album from the Pixies.
Oh.
They've been rather busy in the 2000s. This is their 4th album since 2014, with their last being Beneath the Ire, which came out in 2019. And so on the album, we have Black Francis on vocals and guitar, Dave Lovering on drums, Joey Santiago on guitars. Now, those three are original members. And Paz Lenchenton, she is on bass and keyboards. Now, she was with the band from 2016, but she left the band here in 2024. Original member Kim Deal, she hasn't been with the band since 2013.
And T-Bone, just a little bit of nugget information I found out about this song is traditional Pixies have their songs are about 2 minutes in length. This one, they go beyond that. And this also is going to mark the first time in a Pixies album that someone other than Black Francis gets songwriting credit, and we'll get to those shortly.
Okay. So let's start off with the first track, No Matter Day. There's so many things I like about the start of this song, from grungy synths to percussion, but it's the bass line that's the real highlight. Black uses some spoken word during the opening part of the track, Something I said before that can really be hit or miss, but in this case, it does work. At about 2 minutes in, the pace of the song changes drastically and makes this song even more interesting.
Yeah, you're right. This album kicks off with a song full of driving percussions and just some solid bass work. We're greeted, as you mentioned, to the first half of the song as spoken dialogue. That's going to eventually flow into more of a traditional singing. I really enjoyed that guitar solo from Joey that comes up, and the second half of this track really worked for me and made for a solid listen.
That'll take us to the second track and one of my favorites on the album, Vault of Heaven.
I went to 7-Eleven to try and get me straight. I ended up there in outer space. They're in the vault of heaven, trying to titrate. I ended up in some dire straits.
Now, I don't think we've ever mentioned that you really should use headphones for an album. Oh, wait, maybe we have said it too many times, but this one really needs to be listened to with some decent headphones. The musicianship is phenomenal, especially how the guitar is hard at times and subtle at others. It sort of has a spaghetti western tone at times, which I really enjoyed. And the percussion is something to note. It's steady at one point and pounding at another. The Pixies have always been one of those bands that uses nonsense lyrics, and boy, oh boy, this track highlights that. I went to 7-Eleven to try to get me straight. I ended up there in outer space. Huh? And you have to listen closely, but late in the song, there's a faint la la la, which I thought was really cool. Despite those ridiculous lyrics, the song is a fantastic example of how you can combine so many musical elements to make a stunning collection of sound.
Yeah, this driving guitar riff that opens this song really pulled me in. I really enjoyed not only the vocal delivery from Black Francis, but his lyrics as well. I thought they were really effective. Ridiculous, yes, but effective. The band is on point, and the musicianship is outstanding on this one. T-Bone, this was an early album highlight for me as well. And if you can make lyrics like, I went to 7-Eleven because I thought it was really great, work for you, you know you're in for a great song.
Oh, and I completely agree. Yeah, the lyrics are senseless, but they work so well that it brings the song together.
We'll see how we feel about track number 3, Dregs of the Wine.
Back to Brazil in '66. End of the world, and I don't blame her. And then it's time to go. It's really time to go. But are we gonna make it?
I really enjoyed the little intro on this one, how they kind of starts talking about the song You Really Got Me.
While I prefer the original version of You Really Got Me, she will defer to the Van Halen version.
This track does a great job of allowing everyone in the band to shine, and this song, I like how it kind of keeps building upon itself. And actually on this song, it's one that Joey gets to take music contribution credit for. It's the first of 2 that he gets. Joey's surf rock guitar solo blends perfectly into the chorus of Dregs of Wine. T-Bone, I will say that not a lot of bands can pull off a song that continually changes tempo, but the Pixies pulled this one off perfectly.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. The pace of this track really picks things up. The drum beat takes this one to a near punk level, really hammering the song into a strong driving force. I also really enjoyed the backing vocals that work with Black. This is one of those songs, just like that we've seen from other artists, in which the musicianship is so strong that it sometimes takes over the track, almost leaving the vocals to the side.
Let's jump into track number 4, Haunted House.
A haunted house that's built to stay, setting me on fire. Haunted house all full of ghosts. I'm gonna pass that way. Haunted house where I want to go. I'm gonna go today.
T-Bone, we come to what may be my new favorite Pixies track ever. I'm really enjoying what we've heard on this album so far, but this song takes it to another level for me. The softer guitar melody mixed against some great bass line and vocal delivery, and the lyrics I found to be fantastic. This song continues to grow on me with each listen. It's no question the album highlight for me.
Yeah, things slow down just a bit on this track, but once again, it's the percussion that it's so enticing. The guitar and the bass play against each other in a way to give this track a sinister sound, which fits the subject of the song very well. But it's the use of some synths that add a bit of an ill-boding, ghostly presence, which I really like, Steve.
Yes.
Next up is the fifth track, Get Simulated.
But if you join me, then I know you feel the same. Get simulated. I'm gonna get me down, down. Get simulated. I'm gonna get me down, down. Get simulated. I'm gonna get me down,
The band keeps up the pace a little slower to begin this track, but later in the song it does pick up a bit. The highlight of the track is, once again, that bass line. It's steady and strong throughout the song. There's plenty to like about this song, from the multiple guitar lines to a steady drum beat. But Steve, I do have to say this is probably not one of the stronger tracks on the album.
Well, T-Bone, I really like it when an album has a great flow from one track to another. And this one is another one that just flows really well. Here we get another, I'd call maybe classic sounding Pixies track that allows each member to contribute. Yeah, it's not one of the strongest on the album, but it's still definitely worth checking out.
Yes. That'll take us to the sixth track, The Lord Has Come Back Today.
favorite sign that the Lord ain't coming back. You break your mama if you step on a crack. Good times, 'cause I know that today's the day. Good signs, yes, the Lord has come back today.
Acoustic guitar opens this track and is accompanied quickly with both electric and a great bass line. And the drum work, as I think we've been seeing on this whole album, is exceptional. Of any tracks on this album, this is one that has a little bit more of a country vibe, though it's minor for the most part. There's a number of tempo changes, which I thought were a really nice touch.
Yeah, I really also liked how Black Francis' softer vocals do a great job to set the tempo and pull you into this song. From there, we get outstanding bass and guitar work. And when the harmony vocal part of the song comes into the mix, it's another one that I was all in for. To steal two words from this song to sum it up, good times. Jumping into track number 7, Thunder and Lightning.
Okay, you count the miles till lightning turns to thunder. How long until it tears us both asunder?
I enjoyed how the bass intro sets maybe the thunder tone, and the vocals singing about the lyrics about counting times between lightning and thunder I found to be very effective. The highlight for me on this, though, was that blend of bass and guitar work and the percussions, and the semi-harmony vocal mix was a nice layer that added to my enjoyment of the song.
So, Steve, I'm going to forgive lyrics such as, "There was a storm today in Chinatown. My favorite vegetables were really coming down," despite them being ridiculous, because, Steve, this is probably my favorite song on the album. It is so good. Black's vocals here are, I would say, the best on the album. Along with that, the instrumentation is outstanding. The guitar work in particular, both acoustic and electric, are put together in such a way to create a wonderful atmosphere. The backing vocals counting in Spanish, of course, makes no sense, but it's a fun addition. If you are anything like me, you'll be singing along to this infectious song and won't be able to get it out of your head. I absolutely loved it. Next up is the 8th track, There's a Moon On.
Don't like a steak with no pepper on it. No, I don't like to spit, and I don't like to fight. Don't wanna be alone on a full moon night. There's a moon.
This track begins, in my opinion, somewhat generically. It's probably the most regular rock song on the album, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. But whereas the rest of the album takes some chances, this one's a little bit more standard in its presentation. But despite that, the instrumentation is very strong for the most part. Halfway through the song, the guitar really takes over with multiple riffs working against each other. It's relatively short, but extremely tight musicianship. This is one of the shortest songs out on the album, maybe for the best, but still a pretty good one.
After a few softer tempo songs, the band kicks up the pace with this one. To me, the highlight on the track is when the chorus kicks into the song. T-Bone and I agree with you. This is not really the most solid song on the album. It's really actually slightly below the level of quality that we've heard on the tracks that have come before it. Still worth checking out. It does kind of remind you of that kind of cruise control Pixie song.
Yeah. Next up is the 9th track, Pagan Man.
Once upon a time, many moons from now, you will be miles away. Pagan man, it's on you.
You would swear you were listening to Neil Young with this track, not only with the instrumentation, but with the vocals. It's a wonderful song that in many ways is very simply presented, but the deeper you look into it, what is offered, the more complex it becomes. And when the whistling comes in later in the track, it creates a real earthy feel, again, bringing back that folk feeling that really works so well.
Yeah, and I found out Pagan Man was actually the last song recorded for the album. Black Francis said that he wasn't in the mood to compose a lyric because he was just spent. So, if you will, Joey wrote the lyrics for this one. This is the first time Joey's got to write lyrics for a Pixies song, which I did not know. And how the song itself is, well, it kicks off with some great vocal delivery. I found myself really enjoying the lyrics Joey put together. They're going to pull you into what I feel is a very enjoyable song. I really like your Neil Young comparison. You also get a nice guitar riff from Joey that just added a nice little layer to the song.
The next one is the 10th, Who's More Sorry Now?
I found some metaphors, a pair of running shoes, and something overdue. I said, but who's more sorry now? Who's more sorry now? Who's more sorry now? You know.
This is another of the more melodic tracks on the album. Black's vocals are very smooth, especially with the chorus and the accompanying backing vocals. The guitar work is fantastic with different lines coming together and a surprising burst of energy to close the track. And while the lyrics, I found a mannequin inside a plastic bin, once again reiterates the goofy nonsense lyrics that Pixies are well known for, they don't take anything away from this song.
And again, we get a song with a bit of softer guitars. Black Francis vocals come into the mix and match this tempo perfectly. But when it gets to the chorus, blending of the backing vocals, I found to be a very nice touch. It's another one I found myself enjoying. And that's going to take us to track number 11, You're Such a Sad You See.
You're such a sad you see, so yeah. It's just so sad to see. How's that? You're such a sad you see. It's just so sad to see.
The tempo on this one was a nice change of pace and really pulled me quickly into the song. For me, I will say the highlight is the musicianship on this track. Black Francis vocals are fine, but they do end up taking a backseat and allowing the rest of the band to shine on this song.
Yeah, the track begins with the lyrics, You're such a sad you see, it's just so sad to see. And while that seems a bit too obvious, I found it still clever in a simple sort of way. But as the song goes on, the lyrics show a great deal of intellectual prowess. I certainly will give Black credit for not following the normal path of simplistic rhymes. And since a Sadducee is a member of the Jewish sect that existed from 1st century BC to the 1st century AD, I'm not sure that lyrics make any more sense than the rest of them on this album, but they sound very smart, and I think that's worth noting. Beside the lyrics, the instrumentation, as you mentioned, Steve, are very good. The drums, bass, and guitar work together to create a strong combination.
And that's going to take us to track number 12, Doggerel.
I'll never wander again. I'll never wander again.
close out the album with the title track, kicking off with some spoken dialogue and simple percussions. We could also get a little bit of guitars sprinkled into the mix. The use of some keys that come in I found to be very effective. This song, like those that have come before it, has its own sound and tempo. About 2 minutes in, the tempo shifts slightly, and here's where I feel the song really picks up and shines.
The band closes the album with the longest track on the album. Most of the songs here are rather short. You mentioned earlier that they went a little bit longer than they have in the past. Granted, but they still are relatively short songs. And this one doesn't feel much different, even though it is the longest. The bass line is the highlight as it continues to be the backbone of the song, but the guitars are equally strong, especially during the chorus. And 2 solos later in the track are short, but both are brilliant. Black uses the lyrics in a more spoken word style to begin the song, but then about halfway through, he and his backing vocals change things up. I felt this was a great song to finish the album. Its mid-tempo style has just the right pace.
Well, overall, T-Bone, I don't think it's going to come to a surprise that I really enjoyed this album. In fact, I think it's one of the rare albums that we've reviewed in a while where I didn't find any skippable tracks. This is an album that if you're a casual fan of the Pixies, pick this up. You will not be disappointed. If you're a bigger fan of the band, I'm sure you've already have this album in your collection. For me, I'm going to say this is probably one of the best albums that the band has released.
And I think that the Pixies have always been one of those bands that's much more of a cult following. They just don't necessarily appeal to all listeners. This album, even with its strange idiocentric choices, could be the one that brings in a larger audience. Now, having come out a couple of years ago, did it? Maybe not, but I think if casual listeners take a chance, they will find that there's a lot going on here, and most of it very good. Fans of the Pixies will be happy that the band is still in fine form. As you said, Steve, I definitely give this one a strong recommendation.
Chances are, if you went to Cruel World or Darker Waves Fest, you may be familiar with the band we're going to be featuring on our next episode, Urban Heat. We're going to be doing a new music spotlight with the band. We sat down and chatted with the lead singer, Jonathan. We think our listeners are going to connect very well with this band. If you're like the dark wave, synth wave, a little bit of goth all mixed in, it's a great band worth checking out. We hope you join us.
If this is your first time listening, we thank you and ask that you please subscribe. That's a great way to support us. And if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to leave us a 5-star review. You can also find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search for New Wave Music Podcast. We'll catch you on the next episode.